All right, Patty, you still there? Can you see me? Can anyone else see me? Eileen, can you see me? Can you hear me okay? I need some human interaction here. Anyone want to give human interaction? Please. Yes, yes, yay! I am so sorry for the lateness of all this. I've been trying to figure this out, and it just wasn't working. So, in any case, I want to thank you so much. All right, thanks, Lynn. Hey, I'm so glad. There is a God. All right. Hi, Julianne. Good to see you there. And unless a lot of people were chased away through the faux pas, my electronic skill and computer and phone skill, we should have a good group here. So I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm totally honored, and I'm going to learn how to do this eventually. And in any case, my name is Mark Ehrlichs, and I am a healer by the grace of God, and I'm totally honored that you're here. And I will give everything I can as far as the questions that you wrote. There's tons and tons of questions, and I'll try to address them all as we go along. And let's see, I will be in Phoenix this coming 2 days. Tomorrow I'll be going to Tucson, and then I'll be going to Phoenix for a few days and working with Reverend Julian's church, community, and that's on the website. And Lynn will be posting all the information about that. If you don't mind, please, Lynn. Hi, Teresa. And Patricia, thank you for being here as well. And one of the questions that, hi, how are you, Christina? Good to see you. One of the questions that a friend of mine wrote, Dorothea, she asked, how do you heal your heart? And just in general, she said, and people say that you have to feel your heart. And there's no feeling in hers, she says. And feel your heart's desire, people say. And she says she can feel it beating. Well, I say, how do we heal the heart in the first place? The heart is not needing healing. It's the emotions that need healing, in my perspective and my perceptions. And we're always looking outside of ourselves to find something, to fix something. It's from the emotional understanding that we create a hurt heart, a sick heart. And those later affect us and keep replicating in our lives to create the actual sick heart. And, then it's medical science that takes over from there. And so these are just my perceptions of things. And please understand that. It's not possible to heal a heart unless we're working with our emotions. And I think that's the most important thing. Otherwise, we're just scurrying around, having all the emotions inducing us and telling us to scurry around like a chicken with his head cut off. Hi, Aggie. Good to see you here. And thanks for posting everything, Lynn. Hey, Leo. Good to see you. And a friend of mine, Diane, there in Arizona, which I'll be seeing in another couple days, she wrote, what keeps us from healing sometimes? And my perception and reactions are we're the ones that sabotage ourselves, unbeknownst to us. And we oftentimes want to be sick. But not all the time, but oftentimes we do. And that's even a control mechanism, a control issue to either be controlled or to control in our sicknesses. And we allow ourselves to be induced with what's going around. Say if it's the flu or sicknesses or whatever, the mind is weak. And it's up to us to notice it at those times that it is feeling weakened. And then we don't have to accept it if we do notice it. I remember one time, a long, long time ago, when I was living in one of the order houses, that there was a fellow, his name was Brother David, and I've told this story 1,000 times. I love this story. It's so reflective of who we are in life. And I figured it was a Saturday. I'm going to go up to the chapel area, do a little prayer work, and do a little meditation or whatever. And I figured it's Saturday, everyone's out, so I had the whole chapel to myself. So I started to go in, and then as I slowly, quietly opened up the door and preparing myself in a real quiet way to go inside. And then as the door opened, I saw Brother David there, and he's on his knees with his arms out, and he's saying, "Oh, God, make me pure, make me pure." And he's saying this out loud, and I'm going, "Oh my God." And so I kind of stepped backwards out of the chapel, closed the door. I figured, I'll go in there later when he's gone. Well, Brother David always had a cold, and he was always sick. I had known him for months and months and months, and he was always sick. And always sniffling, had a sore throat, whatever, and just a lot of nasally problems and headaches and stuff like that. And no one ever said anything until that next day, I guess it was a Sunday. There was a three-way entrance hallway in the order house, and one of the teachers was coming in one way, and I was coming in another way, and Brother David was coming in another way. And the teacher looked at David. They couldn't see me, but the teacher was looking at David and about 5 feet away and said, "David, how come you always have a cold?" And it kind of shocked him. I was looking at his face barely peeking around the corner, and he just didn't answer. He didn't know why. And so it just made an impression on me. This teacher called him on having a cold. And so I just walked away, but a couple days later I realized I get a cold every quarter of the year. And hey, Lori, Catherine, good to see you all here. Thanks for being here. And so it hit me with my cold every quarter of the year. Why do I even have to have that? If that's true. So I saw David, I guess it was that day, and he didn't have a cold for the first time. And then I realized, well, if this is really happening, then Brother David up in the chapel was asking for purity, and of course the body's going to keep on cleansing and cleansing and cleansing in some way or another. And or accepting, that's the way to cleanse, because that's the way the world cleanses out, is through a cold or a flu or something like that. And so, I figured, why do I have to get one? And so I pictured in my head, recognizing, why do I have to? And I didn't have to accept a cold anymore. So the next quarter came around when I would normally get a cold, and I didn't. For the first time, I didn't get a cold. Well, I had a cold, but I didn't have the physical symptoms anymore. And so I thought, wow, this is the cat's meow. I love this. And Brother David's walking around without his cold, so this stuff must be true. Well, as time went on, I guess it was maybe about 10, 15 years later, I remembered what had happened and how I hadn't had a cold since then in all those years. And so I'm elated. I say, wow, this is really neat. This is the cat's meow. And so why do I was starting to think, why do I even have to have the symptoms inside? Why do I have to feel stuffy inside, even though I didn't have the sniffle, sore throat anymore, blowing my nose anymore, having whatever, headaches and out of sorts. And it was just one of those things that came upon me. So why do I even have to have that? And I accepted that I didn't have to have those symptoms inside of myself, as well as the external symptoms. I didn't have to have them. So I guess it was the next quarter came around, and since then I didn't have a cold anymore until one day, I guess it was about 25, 30 years later. I was in a mall in Nashville, Tennessee, going down an escalator, and it was wintertime, and there was this really big dude behind me, and he sneezed right on my neck, and instantly I thought, oh my God, it was like cooties. And I said, oh my God, this is horrible. So I'm sitting at a desk, and I started later that day, and I started feeling symptoms come on me. And I realized what had transpired with that big dude behind me sneezing on me and me thinking that I had the cooties. And so I said, well, this is pretty neat. I haven't had a cold in all these years, so this isn't going to hurt me. And I figured, okay, I can get rid of it anytime, I thought. And so it kept getting worse and worse and worse from that time on. And eventually I realized, I guess it was several hours later, that, oh my God, I hate this. I'm getting so sick. I just can't handle this anymore. My throat was hurting. It was closing up. I was just pouring out of my nostrils. I had a headache. I had all the symptoms of this cold. And so I started praying my tail off. Oh God, take my life. And I guess it was that next morning that just about all of it was gone. So we take on a lot of this stuff as far as sabotaging ourselves. And that's my point. And as far as what keeps us from healing at times is, what we believe, what we accept. And here's a really neat trick that I'd like to suggest to people. Whenever I feel, a cold sneaking up into the highways and the byways of my thinking, or someone I'm near is not feeling well, what I'll usually do is I'll become conscious of that in that moment. I've trained myself, and anyone can do this. As soon as we have a thought or something that comes out of our mouth thinking that we're going to get sick, even if we have a thought of becoming sick, even where it's in between the conscious and the subconscious, we can picture that thought and the sickness leaving us like fumes out of the body, where it no longer has a life within us. We can do these things, and it's a gift that we can do, that we can practice. Then we find that we're not going to be as sick, or we won't be sick at all. Great tool to use. My friend Aria, she wrote, once in a class I took from you back in the 90s, you built up your aura and we saw it. Can you talk about the light? In all my workshops and all my trainings and the apprentice training that I offer, I still show people the light. And that light is what emanates forth from us. It's a gift, but we all have it, to varying degrees according to our needs. My place is to show you that you have it too. And the light carries a consciousness, and it carries an intelligence of itself. And that light is really our first body that our physical body forms around. And it's just born from reciprocating love. That emanates forth from us. And the light is within us. It's all around us, as I said, and it's actually our life force. And sure, we all have less light emanating, the less we're in love with something, or the less we're in love with ourselves. or if we're injured or sick, there's a depletion for the time. But that spiritual body, we can't destroy it. Thank God. We can't heal the spiritual body. It's not possible. That belongs to God. That's our life. And we're going to go on, you know, because of that. So the light itself is a natural part of us. And my place is to teaching classes and stuff like that, and workshops and healing circles and apprentice trainings. And so that light is going to be there, and it's going to be exhibited to influence you. And the influence touches, or we're influenced, I should say, through our spiritual form that recognizes it. And that's what's important. A dear friend of mine, Gary, are nature spirits also known as elementals? Personally, I don't remember a lot of this stuff in my old teachings, but offhand I want to say, again, are nature spirits also known as elementals? I say no. Elementals, there's, if I'm correct in my understanding, there's 7 of them. There's elementals of fire, there's earth, there's elementals of water, there's elementals of ether, and there's elementals of void. And so that's 6. And then there's one other. And they are separate, and yet they have their purpose in keeping our creation and everything in its coexistence, in its synchronicity, in its life, I believe. And in my understanding, the next realm, in like an evolutionary state, I don't know if you can even call it that, are the nature spirits, which I've met some, and I have stories about them. But I don't try to understand these things. I'm more concerned with just giving as much as I can to someone that I'm trying to work with, or I'm trying to help, or help in some way. I don't know, whatever's available. And I'm concerned with my writings. I'm concerned with having fun. I like to do that. And so, but the elementals are there. They're natural, and way beyond our perceptions, unless there's the sum that can perceive of them at times. But we can't always perceive of them. But you'll notice that you do perceive of them when your mind isn't on them. You'll perceive of them more often when it's a natural act. Aria Norman, my friend, she wrote, why does the aura make a light? Well, that was back in the other question. I already answered that. So going on to the next one. Kathy Hines, I do not get much physical exercise. I sit a lot of the time and reading. Are there mental exercises one can do that just are as good for the physical body? I don't believe so, but then again, sometimes I say sure, so sometimes I'll change my mind. If you read and you're sitting a lot, yeah, I hope that answered the question, Aria. If you're reading and sitting a lot, you can contemplate, and when you do, you can also extend those times and learn. If you can purposely extend the times that you're contemplating, it turns into focus. And that's where spirituality lies. And so, as we're going into focus, we're learning to extend the mind's capability of holding a thought. And we can focus more, and for a longer period of time, and more purposefully. So I think that it's a wonderful idea and important to have some physical activity as well. And it's almost like a car radiator. If it sits there long enough, the water stagnates, and then after a longer period of time, it starts to clog up and calcify, and all kinds of things happen in that radiator. And then it begins to rust from within itself. It's the same thing with us. Unless we have some kind of activity, we're going to end up rusting too from within ourselves, and things start falling apart and breaking apart, etc. These are just physical bodies on this orb, that have substance. But the true spirituality is where both worlds blend together, I believe. My perception. Hey, Sue Gray, good to see you here. Hi, Diana. And so, Sue Cavus, my friend, she asked me a question. Please comment on healing by working with emanating consciousness through your hands. What do you mean by doing that? Light, image, action. Again, please comment on healing by working with emanating consciousness through your hands. And it was something that I said one time. Yes, that's what we do, and it's getting ourselves out of the way and allowing that divinity to move through us more freely. And if we're in the way, and healing, it's not going to hold in that person, nor is it going to retain an understanding within us of what's happening. And so, or it won't not only hold in that person, they may not even have an experience of healing, which is really change. And so what we're doing is we're allowing, in a sense, the hands of God to come forth from us and to take over for us. So it knows what to do so much greater than us. We're just there as vehicles for it to move through, because the situation is set up for that. And then something in the person's life changes immediately, or after a while. So it's the consciousness, allowing the consciousness of that by having our minds recognize and realize that it has nothing to do with us, that it's doing it. And that's, I think, the most important thing, or an important thing to know in working with the healing and its consciousness. So, and then she wrote, later you talk about a greater consciousness, a super subconscious intelligence that carries itself through the soul information. How do you make this a tool? I think everything else is just superfluous chatter, and it doesn't matter about the super subconsciousness or super subconsciousness or anything else. It just really doesn't matter. And we can discuss it, and I can tell you about these dynamics and break it down for you. But as we learn to go within more purposeful contemplation and meditations, it happens naturally within us, and we start to get an understanding about it. But we have to walk the walk as far as, just trusting and accepting, because that's all healing really is knowing and accepting. And we're knowing it because we trust it. And so everything else comes to us naturally as we develop into contemplating, wondering about something. That's what contemplation is. It's no different than being in the shower or doing dishes. You're all of a sudden getting a piece of information, an aha moment, when we're scrubbing ourselves down and washing our hair or whatever, or doing the dishes or whatever. We're concentrating on something, we're being active, and then the information, an aha moment, comes to us. That's contemplation. And in that contemplation, it's something we wondered about at a previous time, maybe earlier that day or a couple days before or the day before. And it's something we didn't know about, but information will come to us. It's an idea that happens from within us, and that's given and shared with us. And the contemplation is actually the activity of meditation, as I tell everyone. So as we learn to contemplate purposefully, just like it happened to us, it came upon us in the shower or doing the dishes, then as we can remember what that was like, and if we can hold it a little bit longer of getting ourselves out of the way before we started thinking, which cut it off, and if we can maintain that for any length of time, then we find that we are able to do it for longer and longer and longer periods of time, which turn into meditation, because, as I said, contemplation is the activity of meditation. And so we have the ability to do that and perceive of information within us. So that's what's important. And that's what's really, really important. And Lori, good to see you, Lori Veselar. She asked, how do you draw healing energy when working by yourself? And there is so much power when working in groups. Great question. I think that it's most important to recognize that it's not really us in the first place. Then we're not limiting ourselves or the divinity that's within us and all around us in everything. And sure, I realize that there's numbers, there's greater, I realize the greater in the numbers, the more juice and the greater the spirit moves. But I've seen some most amazing healings happen with just the other person there. And I also think that we can see the results with the numbers of the attendants because the godliness is showing us that there could be more. So, we have the same spirit moving through us, whether it be 50 people or 500 people in front of us, or just one person. That's why healing happens. We're there for someone. We're giving something. We're giving our lives to that person. And so we're going to see amazing things, miraculous divinity coming through and changing the person right there or over time, whatever's needed for that individual. And we'll see the same energy in a group of 100 or 200 or 500. It doesn't matter. The same darn energy. The same life force moving through. And then Michelle Haverson, my dear friend, she found out, I have found that if I have a drink at supper time and then attempt to send healing, it fails or does not feel as it should. What are the rules on this? No rules. No rules at all. A drink or more takes us, well, let me start off this way. I've learned, for me, that I cannot work with someone who's doing a lot of drugs. It just won't happen. Or drinking a lot. It won't happen. Because the person doing these things, they're coming from a subjective mind. When we're not doing these drugs or the alcohol, then we're coming from an objective mind. So that's a curtailing factor right there. But then again, I've had a glass or two of wine and emergent situations have come up. I had placed my hands on, in those emergent situations, I placed my hands on someone's head or belly or arm or whatever. And immediately, that was of the priority. That was of the most needed situation for those people at those different times. And all my tipsy sense, influence over the alcohol was gone. And it was no longer me, it was that divinity coming through. So the more priority we give in our life to that, the more it influences us. And even if we are tipsy or whatever, it's not going to affect us. The healing will come through of whatever is needed for that person, as long as it's coming from our heart. I feel that's what's most important for that. It's like you're going in, when you're coming from your heart. That's an immediate, dynamic where the mind is pure from that, from the heart, and it's for that moment or for that time. So that's where the intercession lies. Good questions, really good questions. And from my friend Mac, what are your beliefs about putting a boundary between you and the one you are doing healing on? I never put boundaries up. And then I'm living in the world of superstition. And if I'm living in the world of superstition, then I'm putting God in a box. And it's a control trip. I don't put up boundaries. I refuse to. I give as much as I can to anyone and everyone, as deeply as I can. And I think that's the only important thing. And when you're coming from that place, you don't have to worry about cooties. You don't have to worry about someone doing anything to you. You don't have to worry about anything, really. My perception of things. Here's one from my friend Kay. Mark, I was glad you sent a link to your video, and I listened to it. I don't do Facebook, so hope you can continue putting it on your YouTube for people like me. Enjoyed it very much. Thank you. Oh, by the way, this will be uploaded to the YouTube channel, so please subscribe to it. And anyways, my question, she wrote, is that's been bugging me lately. If you'd like to include it, it is, why do we have to have this earthly human veil? What is its purpose? Thanks. You know that I'm a barrel full of questions, so I'll keep it that for now. Hope to make it to your next Healing Circle of Columbine in Unity. Hi, Kate. My perception is that we're here to get to know ourselves. There's no other rhyme or reason. Also, that if we're exposed to immediate enlightenment, we couldn't handle it. In my life, in my perceptions, that's what I believe. So, as it is, if we were exposed to a spiritual experience, actually, how long would it last? If you were exposed to a spiritual experience, how long would it last? 5 seconds? Let's say a maximum of 10 seconds for the actual experience itself. Until we thought of something and that we gave a greater priority to. Then the spiritual experience would be over. But I know people that can actually hold a single thought in God for up to 10 to 20 minutes because of their dedications. See, we're evolving. That's what matters. And, it gets to how long can we stand in the light of God? We think that, oh, I can do that. No problem, no sweat. But the frequency, the vibration, the consciousness, the subconsciousness that would fill us is just so huge. It's unmeasurable. We couldn't handle it. We're here to get to know ourselves. We're evolving constantly. So, the next thing, thanks for putting that up, Lynn. That's the YouTube channel that you can subscribe to. And we'll always have these Q&As with the gathering here on YouTube, with other events as well, and other classes that we're going to be getting into. Lindsay, my friend Lindsay Sutherland, how can we have a full-time awareness of the divine? Just answer that. How can we make our partnership with God consistent rather than the yo-yo between that and lack thinking or separate? My answer pretty basically is we develop it, and it's an evolution that happens within us. Times have changed since thousands of years ago. We're no longer dense and base and gross like we were. Uh, uh, we're different human beings. We're evolving. The mind is also evolving as well. And the heart and the concept of spirituality is evolving. Back then, it was simple and it was base. And but we're getting to know ourselves, and it takes a long time, unfortunately. But each lifetime that we experience this, we have opportunities to get to know ourselves. Again, that's what it's about. Becoming more conscious, more purposefully. Mary Solano, Mark, what are your go-to ways to nurture and revive your spirit after a long day and feeling spent? Is there any ideal way to begin and end the day for maintaining balance in your spiritual energy? I can't tell you about sleep because I don't do that very much. But I think it's important. Hi, Jamie Francis. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Give Noah my love. What I do is, upon awakening, I have never not, in years and years and years, saying, okay, God, take my life, kill me. And I actually say that and I feel that and I give my life to God in some way or another. And whatever my consciousness can, conjure up of giving my life. And it's different every single day. Then I go about my day, say if I know I have events or whatever, I say, okay, boss. And sometimes I say this too, okay, boss, prepare the way before me, or, make it easy for me, or make it, a little bit simpler, and or prepare the weather for me, or something. And it does. And I say, God isn't it. It's not a man, it's not a woman. It's an it in my mind, in my perception. I don't want to limit it in any way. You can call it whatever you want. It does not care. You can perceive of it in any way you want. It does not care. We're the ones who conjure up ideologies and understandings and whatever. So that's what I do. That's how I prepare myself and how I end my day as well. And what I try to do is at the end of the day, there's what I call a retrospection exercise. And I learned this in my order. I was taught this, and I took it seriously. And when I do this, I know that I'm empty at the end of the day as well. So what I do is when I'm laying down in bed, it only takes maybe about 10 to 30 seconds, because the mind works much faster than analyzing or critiquing or doing whatever, breaking down or trying to understand. I just picture from when I'm laying down, I picture right there in that moment, and any major thought that has come to my mind, I give it up totally. Or anything that happened, say, 15 minutes ago, that was major for that time, or an hour ago. And every time I come up to any time zone, all the way to the beginning of the time that I woke up in the morning, I keep giving each thing up and I keep letting go. And then I don't have to carry these things with me anymore. That's what I do. And the spent is gone. Even when at the end of my day at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, the spent is gone. And so I remember another way of relating is for one time I was my teacher put me in the chapel in seclusion and isolation for I guess between 9 and 11 months. I don't remember. And during this time, it was in Boston at the time, and during this time the seasons would change, and it would get cold there, and all I had was a real thin brown robe. I didn't have blankets, I didn't have a pillow, and every time I got one, it was taken by the chapel attendant and hidden somewhere where I couldn't find them, because she didn't want it messing up the chapel. And so I had to learn to live without those things. And one day, worrying about it, that I was going to get cold at night, because the little space heater up in the chapel on the third floor in Boston during the middle of winter, it was freezing, and I was concerned that, for my health. And so all of a sudden, in my concern, I felt a warmth come upon me, because I was truly concerned. As we all have these kinds of experiences, as subtle as they are. But I was living in a chapel where nothing was subtle. And I had no conversations with me. I was on silence and seclusion in this chapel. And that was my place. So I became more sensitive to those moments. And there was this warmth that came upon me, and it stayed with me for the remaining months that I was in this chapel, living there. And so during this time, I found myself only doing a couple different things. And I was either meditating, I was in prayer, or I was reading. And that was my entire life for the every day, 24 hours. And, or not full 24 hours. I couldn't wait to go to sleep at 2 or 3 in the morning to wake up 2 hours later. And in this, I'm sorry, I'm reading a text as well. During this time that I was sleeping for just those 2 or 3 hours, I couldn't wait until I got up the next morning. And then I would start my day over again. And this went on for months. And then one day I realized why this was happening, and I felt full of energy, full of life. I couldn't wait to meditate and pray and read again. And then I realized that it was because I had less resistance in my life. I had no responsibilities in my life. And my only place was to be there to pray and meditate and read. I had no other rhyme or reason for being in that chapel and to be in seclusion and in silence. And so we can find that silence within ourselves. Sure, we'll need sleep. But if we can take a perspective that things aren't really as difficult or as bad as we think they are, and we can let them go, then the more invigorating we feel, the more invigorated we are. And the more we can fulfill our day with a clearer head. Just a couple suggestions. And then Patty, my dear friend Patty, when doing absentee healing on a person, what is the easiest way to help change the consciousness of the person's pain? What I sometimes do, Patty, is I try to go, when I'm working with someone, I try to go deep enough inside myself to get to a place that I can actually picture the pain like a globule. And it's a nondescript globule that's moving, and it might be dingy gray, it might be dingy green, or dingy blue, or dingy yellow, or something, but it's a globule, and it's just lingering in a specific area where the pain is being exhibited in the person. And so what I do is I try as deep as I can to go in, and I I let it know that it doesn't have to be afraid of me, and I observe it. As soon as I let it know it doesn't have to be afraid of me, I observe it breaking up, dissipating. And sometimes I'll see it leave as a gaseous form out of the person. It'll just vanquish. So sometimes it'll let us in. Sometimes we're able to do it. I find it more successful the more I've done it. And it just takes practice on your part to be able to do that. I teach these things in the workshops and the apprentice trainings. Teresa Farley, hi. She asked, Mark, what about being sensitive to animals? I have a few instances where I could hear the animal speaking to me telepathically. Is this the best description of what it was like? And I wrote back, expressing back that yes, and I love animals too. I remember one time I was sitting at my desk, and I used to have this dog named Snow, loving female dog. And she was sitting in the hallway, and I was sitting at the desk, and I turned my head and I saw her, and I said, "Come here, Snow, come here." And she just wouldn't get up, and her head was down on the ground, and something came over me to look at her as I show people how to see my light when it comes out of me. I looked at her, and I saw this glow of red. And I said, "Oh my God, you got a headache." So I went over to her, and like she was showing me the headache. And I saw it as well, whether she was doing it consciously or not. And so I went over to put my hands on her, and then I worked with the headache to go away. And then I went and sat back down, and she's just, her head is up now. She's still laying down, but her head was up, and she's just, moving around, wagging her tail. And I said, "Come here, Snow." And she just immediately came over to me, and I petted her and everything. So I remember one time also, when I first moved to Arizona, there was a cat that lived in the shed. It was this larger black cat, and all the neighbors said, "Oh yeah, that cat's been there for years, and it lives in the shed, and it gets into this hole on top of the fence." And so, hope you don't mind. The whole neighborhood loves this cat. I said, "Great." So I tried to, over months, many months, I tried to become friends with it, and a little bit at a time, it wouldn't run away so quickly. It was a feral cat, and no one could touch it, no one could get near it. And hi, Jennifer from Arizona, good to see you here. And so eventually the cat started coming closer and closer and closer to me, and eventually I was able to get a brush, and I started brushing the mats out a little bit at a time. And then it would take off again, and I would see it maybe the next day. And I keep on working at brushing it until finally it had a beautiful black coat. And the fur was long, it was just beautiful. for this feral cat. No more mats in it, and hair wasn't matted anymore. And then the cat got sick with feline disease, and it let me hold its head all the way to the end, and it passed. And as it was passing, while I was holding my head, holding its head, not mine. And so it was about 2 weeks later that out of the corner of my eye I saw movement, and I didn't turn my head to see it. I just let it continue. And as it did, as it continued, the cat was rubbing against my knee, and I just wouldn't give it any of my physical sight. I just kept watching it and feeling it happen. And it was an actual physical sensation that it was happening as well. And so I knew it was Blackie. I saw out of my peripheral vision that it was Blackie. And Blackie was so grateful for all the love and affection that it had gotten, and it was blown away, I guess. And with its consciousness of what it can comprehend, and it just wanted to come back for more. It didn't know that it can let go. It thought that that's what it was here for, and continued to be here for even on the other side. And so I let Blackie know in my mind that it can go, and it went. The cat went, and it never came back. So we have this ability to do these things to varying degrees. And so it's the idea of releasing. Okay, we're running late, and that's because we started late. And I'm so grateful that you were here. And what we'll do is we'll post this up. And please, next week, have a bunch of questions for me, and I'll try to answer them. I'll do everything I can. If anyone wants an appointment, please contact me. I can most likely work with you. I'd love to. I'd be honored to. And thank you so much. I'm totally honored. Lynn, would you please do me a favor and put my contact information onto this? I'd be grateful if you did. All right, thank you. Blessings to you, and I hope that helped with some understandings. They were simple, and I'm honored. Thank you so, so much.